The morning began with a kind of silence that feels wrong. The kind that feels heavy, stolen, and unfamiliar. Jacob Miller wasn't the type of man who panicked easily. But the moment he opened his eyes and realized a woman, confused, startled, and very much naked beneath the tangled hotel sheets, was pressed against him, his heart stuttered hard enough to steal his breath. "You weren't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be here." An unmistakable shock in her wide dark eyes told him she was thinking the exact same thing. For a long suspended moment, neither of them moved, both clutching blankets to their chests like shields, frozen between disbelief and fear. And in that surreal silence, the reality hit him like a train. This wasn't just any woman. Even in her panic, even with her hair messy and her face pale, he recognized her. Everyone added. She was the CEO whose face was plastered on magazines. The corporate typeweight who commanded rooms and companies with a single decisive look, and now she was waking up naked, beside a single dad who could barely afford rent, if you believe that kindness, second chances, and unexpected miracles can change a life. Then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Jacob's head throbbed as pieces of the previous night drifted back like shards of broken glass. He had only been at the hotel because his 10-year-old son, Caleb, had insisted they go to Thessady's annual charity gala together. What Jacob didn't expect was to feel suit of place among shimmering gowns, diamonds, and executives discussing world-changing deals. He was a mechanic, a man who worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. A man who had promised his son things he was never quite sure he could deliver. He hadn't planned to drink. He hadn't planned anything at all. But then the CEO, Ava Sinclair, had stumbled away from a crowd of flashing cameras and suffocating Jack's bench, looking for fresh air. He remembered offering her a seat. He remembered her admitting she felt like she was drowning in a world she'd built with her own hands. He remembered both of them laughing at the absurdity of life. Two strangers from opposite worlds clinging to the same feeling of being overwhelmed. The rest was blurry, a mixture of exhaustion, too many emotions, and two people who hadn't realized how lonely they were until they stopped pretending. Now she looked at them with her hands trembling, her lips parted as if she wanted to apologize, but no words came. Her eyes darted down at the suit jacket tossed near the edge of the bed, then at a single abandoned eggshell on the carpet. Her breathing hitched. She clutched the blanket tighter. Jacob could see the humiliation in her face. The fear not of him, but of what this meant for her. He wanted to tell her nothing happened, that they hadn't crossed a line, that the careful distance of the blankets suggested they had simply fallen asleep next to each other after an emotionally draining. But he didn't trust his voice yet. He didn't trust anything in that room. And Ava looked like she was one breath away from spiraling. Jacob stood slowly, careful not to startle her, and bundled his clothes under one arm. Had told her she was safe, that whatever last night had been, it didn't define either of them. She stared for a long moment, her expression softening with something like relief, then something much deeper, much more vulnerable. And that vulnerability stayed in Jacob's mind long after he left the room. The next days were a whirlwind he didn't see coming. Jacob returned to the noisy garage where he worked, wiping grease off his hands while trying desperately to forget the surreal encounter. Meanwhile, Ava Sinclair's face appeared on every business headline. Her perfectly polished image untouched by the fragile moment she shared with a stranger. He didn't expect to ever see her again. People like Ava didn't cross into his world twice. But life, he would soon learn, was full of strange twists. It happened one rainy afternoon. Caleb had fallen during school recess and scraped his knee badly. The school nurse called and Jacob rushed from work on to find his son shaking, not from pain, but from embarrassment. Caleb was small for his age and got teased often. Jacob lifted him gently, carrying him through the school hallway, promising him ice cream and bandages in a movie marathon. And that was the moment he noticed her, Ava Sinclair, standing near the entrance, rain-soaked umbrella dangling at her side as she spoke quietly with a school administrator. She didn't look like the flawless, unreachable woman the world knew. Something about her seemed softer, more worn. As if the outside world had finally chipped at her perfect edges, when her gaze found Jacob's, everything stilled. Caleb glanced between them, puzzled by the sudden hush. And in that fragile pause, Ava did something he never expected. She smiled. Not the flawless, camera-ready expression plastered across magazines, but a timid, almost nervous smile that made Jacob's chest constrict. She approached them slowly, asking in that gentle voice he remembered so well if Caleb was all right. What shook Jacob wasn't that she recognized him, but that she genuinely looked relieved to see him standing there. They ended up talking outside as the rain softened around them, droplets tapping against the pavement like a quiet rhythm. Ava admitted she had been thinking about that night far more than she was willing to admit to anyone else. She confessed she had felt an inexplicable sense of safety with him, something rare in her world of flashing cameras and suffocating expectations. Jacob, who had convinced himself their connection had been nothing more than coincidence, felt something within him shift. For the first time in years, someone saw him as more than a tired mechanic and a struggling single dad. She saw him as a man, someone worth noticing. What followed wasn't a whirlwind romance or an overnight miracle. It was slow, patient, real. Ava began showing up at his garage under the flimsy excuse of needing repairs. A claim Jacob gently reminded her didn't make sense considering her team of drivers and spotless vehicles. Yet she kept coming, bringing him coffee, pretending to understand the engines she asked about, just so she could hear him talk. He started looking forward to those moments, the subtle peace she carried with her, the warmth she unknowingly spread into the cold corners of his life. Caleb adored her instantly. She listened to him like every idea he shared mattered. She asked about his drawings, his science experiments, his dream of exploring space someday. And she never broke a promise, not once. Jacob noticed that, and the realization filled him with both admiration and fear. He didn't want to depend on her. He didn't want to let her into the small world he protected so fiercely, only to watch her walk away when things got complicated. But Ava didn't leave. One evening, in a rare moment of vulnerability, she confessed she had never wanted children, not because she disliked them, but because she was terrified she would fail them. That fear, that deep-rooted insecurity, revealed wounds Jacob never knew she carried. Behind her polished success hid years of pressure, loneliness, and walls built tall enough to keep everyone out. Slowly, he watched those walls crumble, not through dramatic declarations but through small, honest moments. The way she let herself laugh without covering her mouth, the way she cried during a movie and didn't apologize, the way she let Caleb hold her hand, the way she looked at Jacob like he was the only steady thing in her storm. But happiness always comes with tests. One morning, headlines exploded with Ava's name. Grainy photos leaked her entering the charity gala, Jacob appearing in the background, and a sensational article twisted the story into a scandalous secret affair. The truth didn't matter. It never did. The world devoured scandal like it was starving. Her board demanded answers. Investors panicked. Her entire empire trembled. Jacob saw the terror in her eyes when she showed up at his house that evening, fear that everything she built was crumbling, fear that she had dragged him into chaos he never asked for. She told him she would fix it, that she needed to distance herself, that she couldn't risk Caleb's stability. It broke her to say it. It broke him to listen. Yet, Jacob understood, and that hurt the most. For 3 long weeks, Ava vanished from their lives. Caleb asked about her every day. Jacob didn't know how to explain why someone who cared so much suddenly disappeared. He hated how empty the house felt without her laughter. He hated that he hoped she would return. Then one night, as he tucked Caleb into bed, someone knocked. Jacob opened the door and found Ava standing there, soaked from head to toe, shivering, clutching a wrinkled newspaper in her trembling hands. Her voice was barely a whisper when she said she couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't keep pretending distance would solve anything. She had spent her whole life sacrificing pieces of herself to fit the world's expectations. And when she finally found something real, something that felt like home, fear convinced her to let it go. Jacob didn't speak. He simply stepped aside, and Ava, the woman who built empires, collapsed into his arms not because she was weak, but because she was tired of carrying everything alone. From that night forward, she stayed. It wasn't a perfect journey. Her reputation took time to steady. People gossiped. Critics whispered. But Ava ignored them. She attended Caleb's school events with Jacob, helped repair old cars in the garage even when she kept dropping wrenches, and tried learning to cook with Caleb supervising, burning meals until the smoke alarm practically became part of their family. Slowly, their three separate lives wove themselves into one. What astonished Jacob wasn't how much Ava changed, but how much she flourished. She became lighter, freer, softer. She still handled board meetings and major deals. But now she also helped Caleb with homework and kissed Jacob goodnight with an affection she no longer hid. She stopped living as if every second were a battlefield. She began living as if each moment was a gift. Months passed. And one crisp autumn evening, as they sat on the porch watching Caleb chase fireflies across the yard, Jacob realized something profound. The woman who once trembled in his arms had become the person he trusted more than anyone, and he, just an ordinary man, had become her safe place. Not because he was extraordinary, but because he offered her what she'd been denied all her life. Kindness, honesty, steady comfort, and love with no conditions attached. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more stories like this.